Hello, everybody. My name is Bart Sharp, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5, coming out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And we are also on Facebook, YouTube, Roku, cable television, and also the uprntalkradio.com website. So all of that is out and about, all available, and I think it's a really nice thing. Oh, by the way, we have a third member here. We have Ari over here, but we have Henry the cat over there. I think Henry has become my comfort kitty. Comfort kitties just make you stay at home more and be calmer, I think. Not that I have a problem not staying at home and not being calm, but Henry is here to reassure that I stay on track. So, and that's a really good thing for February, I think, because, I've been watching the Buddhist monks walk from Texas to Washington, and it just seems to be kind of the opposite of a tornado. In other words, it's an energy that is growing and moving, and it is silently changing everything. And I think that's a really good theme about how we can silently go out into the world and use things. And of course, on Becoming Quantum Conscious, we always approach a lot of different ways to become more conscious. So I thought, why not bring on Ari
Esmaili.
Thank you. And who is a doctor and also is an expert in ketamines. Welcome to the show, Ari.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's a kind of an exciting topic. And, I hear a lot about ketamines out in the world, as I imagine a lot of people do. And I thought maybe we could just talk about this topic, bring it up to a lot of clarity, and also Dr. Ari, I think I'll just start with, reading your bio. Dr. Esmaili is a licensed physician in Texas, attended University of North Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine in Fort Worth, residency, also trained in family medical medicine, general medicine, attended underground at University of Texas in Austin, has always been interested in interactive alternative medicines. That's why he kind of likes me, I think. Not that I'm medicine, I'm shaman. Currently, it's focused on hormone replacement therapy, peptide medications, longevity, age management, and mental health. And also under that umbrella is ketamines. You can find Audrey at Austin Call a Doc, and that would be Austin Call a Doc with each word in caps.
Oh, no, it doesn't have to be.
Oh, it doesn't have to be.
Just AustinCallADoc.com.
AustinCallADoc.com right there. So there we have it. Thank you for being on the show, Ari.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So why don't we just start with, what is a ketamine?
Yes, so ketamine was discovered initially as a medication to induce anesthesia. It's an anesthetic that was developed in the 1960s. In 1970, it got FDA approval to be used as an anesthetic. And then after they started using it, they started noticing that the people that are under the effects of the ketamine anesthesia, when they would come out of it, they just had a more calm demeanor. If they had any symptoms of anxiety or depression, they had drastic reduction of those symptoms. And then little by little, ironically, the very first paper that was published on this is actually out of Tehran, believe it or not, in 1973. Out of a
Interesting.
hospital out of Tehran, there was a doctor that noticed that, and then little by little, it started in the 70s and 80s to get more popularity. In the 80s, of course, it was started to be used uh, as a street drug, um, and then I think a lot of things were used as street drugs in the 80s.
Yeah. So when we're talking about speed drugs, we're talking about stuff that elevates your mood, but also elevates your energies and things like that. All of those
Mhm. And
designer drugs.
then in the 90s and early 2000s, there were really legitimate studies that were coming out of, in the United States that were showing uh, the effects of it as an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety medicine, and we call it anxiolytic
Hmm.
properties. And then it just got traction, and a big pharmaceutical company was able to, um, in 2019, get approval for the nasal spray S-ketamine, which is the racemic mixture. So basically, every chemical has two uh, unsuperimposed mirror images of each other, and they took S-ketamine, the racemic mixture of S-ketamine, and they were able to get FDA approval for it for use in treatment of major depressive disorder.
Hmm.
And then from that point on, it just kind of exploded with its usage, thanks to social media and just the internet. Um, a lot of advertising, a lot of um, marketing
Hmm.
around again, and it just got more and more popular.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, when we talk about it being a speed drug or
uh,
designer drug or something like that,
mhm.
you know, I guess the appeal was, I wouldn't say it was a euphoric sense, but it was a deep state of peace, clarity.
Well, I think I'm not sure the reasoning why people use it as I think what it is it causes dissociation. So maybe they would just become like a little bit more uninhibited. But then the term K-hole became coined and very popular.
Hmm.
But when you get to the K-hole at that point, it's like you've used so much drug that you basically lose your ability to interact with other people. And
As they
so,
have the tendency to do that.
yeah, yeah. Um,
But when you talk about disassociation,
mhm,
let's just kind of just clarify that a little bit for the audience.
mhm.
Uh, that you begin to not, you're not influenced by your ego or maybe negative emotions that seem to be there or your stresses that you're living in your everyday world.
Mhm,
That
mhm,
stuff seems to take out and you get a vacation from it
mhm.
and you step into a disassociated state.
Yes, well, it's very difficult to kind of define what this is because I think it's kind of like that characteristic of an ineffable experience where it's really hard to put into words.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people say, what this it's like a separation. It's like they call it an out of body experience,
Hmm.
and I don't really agree with that because when you're under the effect of ketamine, you know that you're still in your body. It's just that to me, the way I like to describe it is that the dissociation for me is a separation from your consciousness and your awareness and your thought patterns.
Hmm. So,
And so
so
it creates that space. And that's what I call dissociation.
it's really funny that you say it that way. I see it as a shaman. Like I see so many people that are under such stress and they're living in their repressed emotions, that they're not in their body And if they use ketamine and they're suddenly floated into their body, which they're not used to, uh, it would feel very disassociative to them.
Well, I wouldn't say they're more into their body because I've done, for me personally, I've done meditation work, and so for me it puts me more in your body. But I know that when I treat my patients, for example, they start twirling their thumb or they move their hand. They just want to make sure they're still here
Yep.
because I guess to them they're like, oh well, I see what you mean by that out of body experience of what it is
Yep.
they're talking about. But I really like to emphasize the fact that under the treatment of ketamine at a subtherapeutic dose, much lower doses that are used for anesthesia, um, that a person can experience the separation between their awareness and their thoughts. It's almost
Yeah.
as if we can look at your thoughts and your thought patterns,
Mm-hmm.
and your awareness starts you start realizing that how those thoughts, uh, and some thought patterns have so much influence on you
Yep. Yep.
from just a different perspective. It's as if you're from the top looking down at it,
Mm.
or it's as if you're looking at it from just a distance,
Yes.
where you're not involved and lost in your thoughts, but you can still see them and experience them, but not from an uncontrollable perspective where,
Yes.
oh, I can't control my thoughts. Or actually, one of the patients that he had no knowledge about ketamine or any other type of entheogens. And he came to me and he said, Doc, give me a medicine because I need to stop my thoughts. And then I told him, well, do you want me to kill you? Is that because that's the only way you can stop
Or,
your thoughts?
or just take a hammer and hit his hand. Quit thinking of those things.
Well, then he'll have, much more difficult thoughts to deal with. But that was his initial reason for me. And then and the first thing that came to my mind would be beneficial for him is ketamine.
Mhm.
So I took about an hour explaining to him what ketamine does, that you can disassociate from your thoughts, but you can never really stop your thinking. Um, and then once he experienced that, he was able to just be a lot more calm, I think, afterwards. And that's the other thing about ketamine, is that in of itself, it is an antidepressant and anxiolytic medicine. However, it just almost starts working pretty immediately. I mean, within 30 minutes to an hour, a lot of
Yeah,
people
yeah.
experience dramatic
Yeah.
reduction in their depression and anxiety symptoms.
Indeed, and just to add, I kind of started this conversation by going into the more illegal aspects of it because it was on the streets. And let's just make it real clear: Dr. Ari is not the psychedelic doctor, like Timothy Leary or something. He is a medical doctor that does this for therapy.
Mhm.
Let's just make that clear. But I just wanted to bring in this whole panorama so people could understand, because we hear so many stories
Mhm.
of people having these experiences that, and it's kind of confusing because you're going, well, did you get that from a doctor? And they go, oh, I got it, from somebody else.
Mhm.
And so it has a big panorama, but one of those things is that I have a friend. As he's gotten older, he has become much more angry, almost as if he has PTSD, which we knew him in his 20s, and now he's in his 60s, and we never saw any of those behaviors. He was a little bit disorderly, but he didn't insult us or be aggressive. And when he approaches his 60s, all of a sudden, these behaviors show up. Maybe he couldn't keep them repressed. maybe those patterns had this place as he got older that they came up. Because I think older people, if you don't resolve your issues and you're holding them down and repressing them, that's what happens. However, he started taking ketamines, and he said it saved his life. He is balanced. He's not, you know, talking at the lady down the street, about yelling at her for something. Doesn't make any difference at all. Uh, so that's a really amazing story. I was told by my friend.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because what ketamine can do is one of the mechanisms that it works through is it activates the NMDA receptors, which in turn increases glutamate in the brain. And what glutamate does is that it can enhance, cognition and cognitive processing, and also cognitive function. But one of the other things that it does, one of the things about ketamine is that it just doesn't do one thing. Every year that goes by, they discover something new that it does.
Wow.
One of the other things that it does is that it stimulates the TORC1 pathway, which increases protein synthesis and improves metabolism of the brain, and basically leads to what we call neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is just where new neural pathways are made, where the junctions of cells in the brain called synapses, it stimulates those to have more protein synthesis and cause what we call autophagy. Autophagy means that the cell becomes a lot more efficient at recycling itself, getting rid of cell parts that are damaged or old or don't function as correctly. It gets rid of those and recycles them into new cell particles to have more efficient function and things like that. So the end result of that is that the person who has been using ketamine starts developing newer perspectives on life, and it can improve the relationship to the self, but also improve relationships with others, and also in nature. So positive social interactions is one of the benefits of ketamine therapy. Definitely.
So going back to the nuts and bolts of this, when we talk about the neural pathways, you were explaining to me how the dendrites and the synapses work, and how that new pattern happens. It's like they're interacting with the dendrites and the synapses. And what little I know of the neural pathways and patterns, a big concept for me was the brain and the neural patterns like to do the same patterns over and over again. Even if they're dysfunctional and they're not working for you, it will stay in the same patterns. And ketamine gets right down to that core.
Yes, it's very easy to have this ruminating thought patterns, and for a lot of people that have depression and anxiety, they suffer from that. They get into this redundant pathway of, a lot of times it's either self-deprecation or feelings of not being good enough or not being just enough, and also triggering a lot of, let's say they've had some experiences in the past that they've completely forgotten about. They don't even remember the experience, and once you lose recollection of that experience, you lose the insight of how that experience is affecting your current behavior. And so one of the things that ketamine does, and one of the things that ketamine does is that because it repairs the neural pathways and causes neuroplasticity, you can get reintroduced with some of the emotions that you've suppressed over time,
Mm.
and the medicine brings out in a way where you can actually maybe see those experiences and make connections to your current behavior. And then once you see that, I'm also a huge fan of still therapy.
Yes.
Then once you get those
You mean the
answers,
verbal therapy with the counselor? Or
yes,
okay,
yes,
just
the
just
professional
clarify.
therapist, uh, um, and um, and
Because
then once you get introduced to those experiences again, you realize how these affected your day-to-day, moment-to-moment behavior and
wow,
feelings. And then once that becomes more clear to you, then you have a much more specific plan and guideline as far as what you actually need to work on with a therapist. And then that in turn helps the person become a lot more uh,
they break through.
functional, basically.
They break through with those old
Yes,
things
it just gives you a
that's
lot
been
more hope. It
repressed.
gives you more peace,
Well,
because a lot of people, I just feel like a lot of people are just lost. It's like they don't know where to even start.
yeah,
And so when they start working with a medicine like ketamine, where it reintroduces to you to your deeper self, and from a perspective of not being lost in your thoughts, getting out
yeah,
of that rumination, and then you have your consciousness observing this state, then you can tap into that consciousness and that awareness during that dissociative state, and then learn from how these things have affected your life. And then once the medicine is done, I highly recommend people to do a lot of journaling, to write down so they don't forget
mhm,
these things that they just learned during the experience. And then from those things that they learned, then they can go and speak with a therapist
mhm.
to really hammer out and deal with those aspects from a psychological perspective.
That's beautifully said. Being someone who's done therapy and also stepped away from therapy, mainly because I kept reviewing all of those stories and we would explain them when we go through it, but there wasn't ever a bridge to get down to that core essence of what that was. And I was doing somatic therapy,
Mhm.
but it didn't change that neural pattern, dendrite, synapses relationship where they could repattern and start a new pattern.
Mhm. Yes.
And this is one of my big questions I had for you is, when you're in that place of peace, that the ketamine automatically takes you, not automatically, but very quickly, like within hours. Um, then it's kind of like, well, how are you going to capitalize on that?
Mhm.
Because you don't want to do this stuff forever. However, you want to reprogram.
Mhm.
And this
Yes,
is
and that's why I think where the therapy is very helpful. Kind of get a guide, but it's like it's your own intuition and your own sense of self-awareness sharpens, I think, using the ketamine. But then some of the answers that you receive needs to be worked on by a therapist. I'll give you an example to make things a little bit clear.
wonderful.
One of my patients, um, just had a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety a few years ago, and I told her that maybe a ketamine would be a good option for her, and I explained this whole thing about, well, you get into this dissociative state where you can observe your mind and thoughts, but not being necessarily lost in them.
Yeah.
And then during this state, you might have some images, or you might hear some words or things that are your own awareness and your consciousness gives to you, whether it's a certain color or certain memories. And then afterwards, we'll talk about how to handle them. And one of the things that she said, uh, interesting thing she said about her experience, was that the word abandonment came to her.
Mm,
And she didn't know what that really meant. But later on, once we talked about it, I tried to convince her to see a therapist and to really work on this issue. Said I believe she had issues with her dad in the past where he left the family and kind of left them, her and her siblings.
Yeah.
And she had this issue with abandonment. Well, she thought that she had outgrown that. And every time,
They always say that.
and so when somebody did ever try to mention that, hey, you're carrying some anger, you're carrying some sadness, or she would get really defensive about it. But once your own consciousness puts it all on a plate and hands it to you, there's no way you can really deny that
Yeah.
because she felt the experience of abandonment.
Mm.
And then she felt how that word abandonment and its associated feelings have affected her as a 30-something-year-old adult, and how it's undermining like almost every single action and thought that she's having today. She had not made that connection before, but under the experience of the ketamine, she realized how important this was. And then that's where the magic actually happens. It's like your own awareness, it's your own consciousness brings up subjects, brings up memories, brings up different things for you where you hadn't realized before because your mind is in a ruminating pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't understand where this all started. It might have started when you were a child and you don't remember any of it, but so that's how I think ketamine is very useful for that.
And just to add to that, um, you know, ketamine is, as Maura said, and I kind of explained this doing shamanic work to people, that when you go back to these places, people really don't want to go back to them in general because they really believe that all of the emotional trauma, but also the neurological reactions in your body become sparked, and you go back into that place, and they say, "Oh, that's very discomfortable. I don't want to do that." As a shaman, I'd say, "Oh, it's just energy. It's something of a vibration in your body." But with ketamine, it's a different perspective in that the neural blockers just take it out of the picture so you can look into it. When you're a child and you've had a bad day, like you're abandoned, you live in that anxiety all day long and you do not have an answer for it. But when you go to sleep, it gets repressed in your memory, and you wake up, you start a new day. And for somebody like your client, they may have had that happen for years, each day repressing it. So it builds, it becomes overwhelming. And here you're guiding her to a neutral place, which is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what a gift.
It is a gift. It is a gift. And one of the things that I love about ketamine is that it almost starts working immediately. Mm-hmm. Within as soon as you administer medicine, the person just has drastic reduction in anxiety, drastic reduction in depressing symptoms. And we really don't have none of the other medicines that we have. I mean, a lot of them take weeks and weeks to work. And so, but the downfall of the ketamine is that you do have to use it. The effects of it don't last also, very long. Usually, typically 2 to 3 weeks, and then you'd have to, use it again, almost like you would use like a fertilizer for your plants, to keep this synapses, to keep this neuroplasticity kind of going. And so, but the effects of it, if somebody can, one of the things that I really love about ketamine, I think it can reintroduce the person to the idea of their own self, who they are inside, and kind of start using it as for more like stuff like spiritual work, meditation, and things like that.
Well, being somebody that grew up in a traumatic childhood, and knowing a lot of people that, because that's become my work, You've you see, or I see in myself and in other people, an ongoing conflict, and it's almost like there's people that they feel like they've lost the battle, and they feel in this place of hopelessness, and that is very indicative
Mm-hmm.
of depression.
Mm-hmm.
People with PTSD, which is a totally different uh, uh, etiology, uh, they feel helpless because they don't know when they're going to be triggered and become the victim of themselves. Uh, it's just patterned so deeply into us. It's incredible. And we're at midpoint of the show, and I wanted to really mess up Ari's last name again. That's what I'm thinking.
Esmaili. It's
Ari
like smiley.
Esmaili.
It's like a smiley, like a smiley face with an E at the beginning. Esmaili.
Dr. Ari Esmaili.
Yes.
And he's he's a doctor, medical doctor. He's an advocate for ketamine amongst peptides. What are the things that you really find it good?
Yes. Hormone replacement therapy. I think that's kind of where my passion is. Anything that I can use to improve someone's physiology
Mm,
is, one of the other things for both men and women, for example, is when the hormones are really messed up and not being produced adequately, that can lead to a lot of depression and anxiety as well. And
mm,
then all it is a simple lab work test where you check your main hormones, and that in of itself can give a lot of answers as far as, well, what's causing the weight gain, what's causing the sleep disturbances, what's causing the, and if
yeah,
it's a hormonal issue, then I think a lot of people just end up getting misdiagnosed as having, generalized anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder or depressive disorder,
yeah,
where in reality it's just that their hormones are in imbalance, and
yeah,
that can be treated. And once you treat their hormones, their anxiety and their depression kind of reduces dramatically.
yeah.
Um, so I really enjoy doing that. But ketamine, I think, also has its place just because of its neuroplasticity. None of the other drugs that we have, like the SSRIs or other drugs that are, let's say, dopamine, norepinephrine pathway, uh, that work through those pathways, most of them, they don't cause the neuroplasticity that ketamine does,
Mm,
and they don't have the immediate effect that the ketamine does. So that's why I really love using ketamine, and I've kind of integrated it into my practice.
yes. In
So
which you do a lot of internet work with people. In other words, you're on Zoom or another network platform to just talk with people directly wherever they are.
yes, yes, and that's helped really quite a bit. I've been doing that for a long time, even way before COVID. But I think COVID, it really helped introduce the popularity of that mode of,
Yeah,
doing treatment for people.
the mobile
Uh,
doctor.
mhm.
And
Yes.
also, you can find Ari at Austin, that'd be AUSTIN, AustinCallAdoc.com. So you can just look right in and get to meet him.
Yes,
Um,
there's my phone number is on there. You guys can just text or call the number if you need to get in touch with me.
yeah,
There's also a fax number listed on there. It's at the bottom of the page,
yeah.
so
So
it's very easy to navigate.
Austin Call and this is Ari Ishmali. My name is Bart Sharp, and my cat behind me, my comfort cat. Let's see if we can get him in there. There's Henry. He's supporting us, keeping my neurons and dendrites and somatic responses very calm. Okay, so my name is Bart Sharp, and this is Becoming Quantum Conscious, and you are on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network. at 107.7 and 103.5 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, this is the second week Henry's been with me. I'm just fascinated with this, but I have a very fascinating person on my right side with Ari. So, um, I just think it's such a wonderful reset for people to capitalize it. And I think with in today's world, we have so much overwhelm, and people are just kind of locked into their patterns, and they become small. And to me, when you kind of get locked in your patterns, you're more easily manipulated. We have so much media out there that tells you whatever you want to hear, which isn't always good, and it may not always be true. But it's reacting, it's bringing up all of these emotions, and people are just overwhelmed with it. And they get angry, they get depressed, they get PTSD, they get, I want to think of it, where you go way up, manic depressive, all of these types of things that we need help, we need intervention. If you feel stuck, this may be right for you. So some of your favorite clients, what have you seen change in people?
Well, I've seen an increase in just having hope. Um, a lot like you hit it on the nail. There's a lot of just hopelessness because people have tried multiple different things and they're just not feeling better. Then there might be a lot of repressed sadness that can result in bursts of anger, uh, like life isn't fair, and things like that.
And some of those are just like repetitive patterns.
Yes, the
Almost
rumination. Yes, there's
like
rumination.
you say these things to yourself, or you say them out loud, and all of a sudden you're doing a song and dance that you've done many times before.
Hmm.
You just go right down in that rabbit hole, and suddenly emotionally you're not present.
Hmm. Yes. And one of the things I've experienced with a lot of people, which is true, and this is actually quite true from a lot of high functioning people, um, in that they just have this internal feeling of just not ever being enough.
Mm.
And that takes a lot of self work to work through. Um, a lot of therapy, a lot of self work, a lot of self discoveries. And um, and so, yeah, I think another thing that I think you can really introduce to people is having this just overall aura of being calm,
Yeah.
having calmness. They experience that during the ketamine session, but once the ketamine session wears off, they're back to their regular world, their regular
Yeah.
stimuli and things like that. But the experience of having that calmness doesn't go away. They don't forget it. It stays with them. And one of the things that I try to coach people using ketamine is that you can always go back to that state of being calm, of not being driven or being out of control, like your thoughts are out of
Yes.
control, and having these ruminating thought patterns that cause a lot of anxiety or depression. Um, and you can get yourself back to that point without using any medicine. And that's where the meditation part and the therapy part and the coaching part of it comes in, where when when you have this experience, it becomes an unforgettable and also ineffable experience where it's very hard to put into words.
Yeah.
And so, but once the experience is over, especially if you sit afterwards and you really think about it and you really journal about it, you can always go back to your notes and just sit quietly in stillness, in darkness, and in silence, and try to put yourself back into that state, because now you know what that state feels like. You experienced it. But not ever having experienced it is very difficult for any person to put themselves in that state, because you don't know what that state actually feels like.
Exactly. People are so disassociated. If you've lived your life where you feel like you've never gotten through maybe the abuse you experienced as a child, it's been with you every day of your life, and you're just functioning and you're surviving. Of course, the most popular way to interact with something like that is addiction. When people become alcoholics, or lots of marijuana, or the list goes on. Overworking, uh, television addiction, internet addiction. The list goes on. But what they all have in common is you quit feeling yourself, and here you can go back to a clean space. And one of the factors about going back to a clean space, if you're going to do uh, something like ketamine, is you have an opportunity to learn different things, different hobbies, be around different people. You want to break the patterns. Someone who quit addictions 30 years ago plus, I gave up a lot of things. I quit relationships. I quit doing, just like a big part of my life, I just pushed aside because I couldn't handle it. I knew I had to repattern. I made plenty of mistakes. If I would have done ketamine, I would have had a calm basis to refer to,
Possibly, yes, possibly. It also, it's good to kind of manage people's expectations, because it doesn't do, you know, it doesn't do that for everybody, but it does tend to do it for a majority of people. Um, and so I think, the best thing to do whenever you're doing ketamine or any other type, I consider ketamine an entheogen. An entheogen is a chemical substance that is usually of plant origin, but it could be synthetic. That is used to have a more of a for spiritual growth, for spiritual experiences. And that's the thing that fascinates me the most about ketamine, is that it can introduce to people the idea of spirituality, of becoming reconnected or connected with the self or the higher self, and just existence in general, the role that person is playing in that existence, and making connections to where they didn't see connections before. And I think that's one of the things that's really downplayed by the medical community, because yes, it has antidepressive qualities. Yes, it's rapid acting, but if you don't realize that it can be used, a medicine that can be used to grow spiritually, then it could be something that you might need, all the time. Um, and so I think that once you get introduced to that spiritual path, how it feels to be in that space where your consciousness and your awareness is separate from your ruminating thoughts. Once you experience that, then the next day, the day after that, you can set a time aside, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and get yourself mentally in that state, because now you know what that state feels like. And so once you've had that taste of it, it's a lot easier to be coached to practice meditation, to practice breath work, to practice all these other things that you can do with certain types of body work, alignments, body alignments that can help you to be put back in that space.
Neat.
And I think that that's, to me, that's the most important part of using the medicine.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, what's happened is, yes, we have a medicine that works really well for the majority of people, but now everybody wants to monetize it. Everybody wants to make a lot of money on it. All these ketamine clinics going up. I mean, now it's like they've made this to a point where it's almost unaffordable for the majority of people because they're charging, these ketamine IV clinics. They charge, minimum $400 from what I've heard first session. Well, if you want to do that twice a week for 4 weeks, and if you want to do that every 2 to 3 weeks afterwards, I mean,
yeah, middle class salary can't handle that.
yeah, exactly. So my goal is also try to make this very affordable.
And also, it just sounds like if it's a successful therapy for you, it's something you may be going down this one direction, and all of a sudden you turn this big corner, and your whole life changes. That's and I think that's what we're all looking for, and you can do it in a lot of different ways. Let's be really clear about that. But when you take about it on the neurological level, you have to change your neurology with this. Whatever that technique and tool you're doing, whether it be an organic strategy or a non-organic strategy. That's what these have in common. It's just interesting because I keep referencing my shaman experience and all the work I've done with that, and I've had a lot of these same things. But let me tell you, it took hours and hours and hours to get to these places. And
it takes hundreds of hours.
Yeah, hundreds of hours.
Practice,
Yeah. And here you get, I'm getting sold on this. You get this really wonderful booster out there.
Well, I also think that it's a great start. There's different tools that we have to help us with our progress in spirituality, and understanding the world, understanding existence and our role in it. I think of ketamine as a great stepping stone tool to jumpstart that process of consciousness expansion.
Yeah.
And so once you experience that, you might outgrow, the effects of the ketamine. It's not the answer, to everything forever. But it's a great start, and then it's going to help you get to a certain point, and then probably once you get to a certain point, you're going to need other tools, other medications possibly to help you, expand. But as far as it being a starting tool, I think it's an amazing starting tool. It's a great first step.
Yeah.
Because of its antidepressant, anxiety effects, the fact that it works so rapidly, the fact that it only lasts for about an hour to an hour and a half, whereas some other entheogenic medicines, you kind of need to take the whole day off or the whole week off, the day before, the day after off. It's you can use it at home.
And so you're taking a pill, right?
Well, no, my favorite way of using ketamine is using a ketamine nasal spray.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Most clinics, they use, they want you to go in. So they use either intramuscular or IV therapy. But if I'm doing something in my own office, I can use a subcutaneous route. But those are only in clinic settings.
Yeah.
But probably the best, fastest, safest way to actually do this is to use a nasal spray for people doing it at home.
Wow, interesting.
Yes. You do a nasal spray, and then what I do with my patients is we do 2 introductory sessions where I mail them the nasal spray. We get on a video call. A lot of times, the first session, the people have a lot of questions what they need to do during the experience. So we talk a lot about what to expect, how to handle certain things. If certain emotions come up, you do this, you do that. Then once they've experienced it the first time, we schedule just, 3 or 4 days later, a second ketamine session. And this time, most people don't have any questions at all walking into because they've already experienced it the first time. So then we spend about an hour or two afterwards, and we talk about how you can integrate this medicine into a routine where you can maximize your depression and anxiety reduction symptoms, and to integrate and how to do it on yourself, moving forward. So that's the way I like to use it. And the cost isn't really much, a whole lot. I do, one bottle of ketamine can cost, somewhere, it's going to be less than $200.
Wow.
But one bottle can last about at least 15 ketamine treatments.
Wow.
So that averages out to be just a little bit over, almost like $20 per treatment instead of $400 per treatment.
That's amazing. That's the beauty of the internet and not having a brick and mortar establishment and such, that you can get this out there and get it out amongst people. I just love the idea that with the internet and so much about how society has changed, there's so many businesses out there that are doing consciousness business, and they're doing it kind of like a mom and pop business. They've kept it small, but they have really put it out there to the people. It's really wonderful. I just wanted to add one thing with this, because we're coming down to the end of the show. So I want you to think about a message you want to give. When I think of the emotional development, I tell people you have to deal with your emotional issues and come to resolution. And this is where the ketamine would also fit in. But also the next step is you begin to learn new vibrations. In other words, you start meditating, you start communing with the forest, you pray to Mother Mary, or whatever that is, that you start to learn a new vibration inside of yourself. The third part is you got to go out and do new things, to where the patterns change in your body. New people, new hobbies, new walks of life. This is the process. And you are on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 107.7 and 103.5. My name is Bart Sharp, and we have Henry the Cat in the back. God, I just love him as my friend there. This show is Becoming Quantum Conscious. And we have been covering quantum conscious territory today with Dr. Ari Esmaili. And you can find him at austincoladoc.com. austincoladoc.com. So we have about a minute left, Audrey. Any parting wisdom?
Yes, I highly, highly recommend people not to give up. If you work with a therapist and even 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 therapists and you're not seeing any results, go find your 6th or 7th or 8th therapist. You will come across somebody that you can able to do work with. Another thing that I highly, highly recommend, when you do therapy work, please record the whole session. Ask your therapist permission to record the session. 2 or 3 days after you've done the session, go to a cafe, go to a coffee shop, or sit at home, re-listen to that whole session, and don't pay attention to what the therapist is telling you. Pay attention to your own voice. You will learn so much from your own voice, your own tone, your own thought patterns. That is just that is where the mind-blowing transformation happens. You start listening to the self, and you start realizing what's actually coming out of your mouth because of your own thought patterns. So
that's really good advice, and surprising advice. That's not what I expected you to say, but I'm glad you did. We'll see everybody next week on Becoming Quantum Conscious. Bye.